classic Bizarro is what I wanted in my collection. And Mcfarlane didn't make it. He made the Rebirth Bizarro. That's okay. I ended up making my own classic Bizarro with the purple suit and that backwards ass. And the infected Superman body lends itself really well to this. With a few other body swaps, well, let's get started and see how we got to this point. Starting off with removing that emblem. Now this is a simulation. In my actual removal of it, it took a lot longer. Make sure you heat the emblem continuously before you attempt it. And use a flathead screwdriver to pry in between the chest plate and the actual chest. So very carefully all the way around. Remove it very slowly. There may be lots of glue, there may be just a little bit of glue. In this case, it only took me 2 minutes on this one because it was very little glue. However, the second figure, which is the infected Superman, that took me a long time. Roughly about 20 to 30 minutes because there was so much more glue. Here, I've already simulated that removal for you, but I wanted to show you, as you can see in here, all the glue that's on this. It definitely took me that much longer, but you need that continuous heat so that you can remove both emblems correctly. So after removing them, then the step is to, well, glue them in so that they stay in place. But before you glue them in, the next step is to clean any excess glue that's left behind, because you want the surfaces to match. And if there is too much glue on one of them, then it's not going to sit properly with the other one that you pull out. In this case, this one had very little glue, so it was very minimal removal of any excess glue. Now before you proceed, make sure that you also clean up both emblems. One of them had a little glue, but one of them had excessive amounts of glue, which why it was so difficult to remove. And if we don't remove those, it's not going to sit down properly. After we glue it, it's just going to be an eyesore. This is where we want to get. This is our goal, to get to this final custom classic Bizarro. So let's continue on and let's see what else we have to do to get to this final step. As you can see, I added some paint dabs to the cape, which really made it look that much better. So our next step is to actually remove the neck piece, and this is a question I had come up several times in the Facebook group. Again, we want consistent heat, and a hairdryer is going to be the way to go. If you want to boil it, that's fine, but however, because it will be wet, it's going to be difficult to hold on to, and you don't want to ruin the figure by having the screwdriver slip either onto the figure or onto your hands and then hurting yourself. So plan about 20 to 30 minutes because these do have a lot of glue. You have 4 points. Each of the 4 corners of the torso of the neck have glue, but the best way to do it is to get into the shoulder, pry it open against the shoulder, being careful not to break it. Once you get enough underneath the neck, pry it up, and then wedge it and work your way around the rest of the neck. Now I've obviously have simulated this on the video for a quicker video. You have 4 pegs, 2 in the back, 2 in the front. Do not break those pegs. If you have to break them, then fine. But try not to break those because those are going to be necessary to put it back into place correctly. Now on the inside, you can see on this had excessive amounts of glue. That's going to have to be cleaned up as well. Same thing on the other piece. You want to make sure that you do the same process on that consistent heat and then removal. So now we want to glue this back into place once you've removed any of the excessive glue. Now I'm using the E6000. The reason I like the E6000 fabric glue is because it is a gel and it does not leave a mess. Primarily, it also dries clear. It does not dry white like super glue. It does not expand like super glue. So that's one of the main reasons why I like it. However, it does not dry instantly. It will take a good 10 hours for it to set properly. So by using an applicator, you apply it to the areas that you need. That way you don't use excessive glue, you don't have runny glue, and you don't have anything on your hands. So only apply it to the areas that are needed. And if you look at your figure, depending on what figure you're working on, you'll see the points of glue that were used. Try to use the same ones. That way you know that the points of contact are going to be the correct ones for it to stay in place. And of course, once you've got it in place and it's set flush to all of the edges, then take a small clamp of your choice, and then you want to clamp it down tight. Make sure it's flush. And once you've got it where you want it, in this case, it makes it easy to use a larger clamp like this to be able to maneuver it around the figure. Once you have it in place, then leave it set for 10 hours, depending on the glue you used. If you use super glue, then that's fine. The only downside with super glue is that once you set it down, it's down. You'd have to totally rip it apart to reset it in case you missed a spot. With the E6000, if you missed a spot, as far as having it flush in one of the corners or one of the edges, you can move it around and then reset it with the clamp, and that way you have it in the place you want without destroying the adhesive. So it's all set in place, and let's leave it, I'm going to leave it overnight. So the second body, which is the Rebirth Superman body, I had to move the cape out of the way to get to the back of the neck. And that's okay, because we can always re-glue that down, and by having this out of the way, it allows us to work that much easier on replacing the neck. Just repeat the same process on this one. Once that's dry, then you can come back later and glue in the cape. If you're going to use a fabric cape, then this is obviously a good point to remove this cape entirely. Personally, I like the way this looks, so I'm going to keep this plastic cape and add a few paint apps later to it to make it that much better. And once again, just like the other figure, before you clamp down and leave it for a few hours, make sure all of the edges are flush, are sitting properly. If not, unclamp it and redo it. This is a nice thing about having the E6000 gel glue. If it was the instant Gorilla Glue, then yeah, I would have to start from scratch and rip it back apart and start over. At this point, it's that much nicer to use that glue so that we can place it in the area we want. Depending on what you have, use a blunt object to push the corners down, not the edge of the screwdriver as I was about to do. And then once you're all set, clamp it down and leave it for the time that is needed depending on the glue that you used. So as your glue dries, this is the perfect time to remove those rest pegs and obviously heat them up. Then take a set of pliers and grab the peg itself with the actual connecting peg underneath the clamp or the teeth of the pliers. Don't grab it the other direction, you can break that pin. Make sure you grab that connecting pin that holds those two pegs together. Make sure those wrist pegs, or I should say the actual wrist, is warm before you put the wrist pegs back in. Otherwise, you will mar the surface of those wrist pegs. And it is at this point that you can add the paint apps of your choice to make it your own. I added some to the cape and I added some to the face. I really like the way it turned out. If you liked the video, go ahead and review it, ask some questions, and if you liked it, then subscribe if you have not subscribed. And in the meantime, I'll leave you with video that's before and after, the way I like to end up showing my work. Enjoy your customizing. We'll see you next time.